assignments are not as easy as you think, and it's not an easy flip. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. But what is an assignment of contract when it comes to pre-sales in Vancouver? So in this video, I'm going to explain to you what is the assignment of contract and how does it work when it comes to flipping a pre-sale and everything that you need to know around assignments, and will they actually make you money in Vancouver. If you don't know who I am, my name is Uzair Muhammad. I specialize in pre-sales throughout the Lower Mainland, especially the Fraser Valley, helping investors, first-time buyers make lucrative pre-sale investments where you actually make money. And if you're serious about investing in a pre-sale, I would love to work for you. A pre-sale assignment of contract essentially means that you take your original contract that you bought directly from the developer and you assign it to the next person, the next buyer, or they call it the assignee, before completion. Now, a few things that you need to keep in mind. It sounds very sexy when you talk about flipping a pre-sale and making a $100,000 flip, but there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of terms and conditions that you need to meet and comply by before you can actually make that happen. Now, a lot of developers will allow assignments of contracts, but there are some terms and conditions that you need to keep in mind. 90% of developers will not allow assignments of contracts on the MLS. Means you bought a unit for $500,000. and you want to flip it for 570, for example. You can't take that contract and put it on the MLS where, like realtor.ca, REW, where everybody can see it and actually just come back and say, we want to buy this contract. The reason for that is developers want to control inventory in their building. Sometimes developers have held back units that they do not want competing inventory. It means that you bought it for $500,000, developer has held back units that they're selling for $600,000. They don't want your contract on the MLS competing at 570. Some of the reasons why they don't allow assignments of contract. So keeping that in mind. The second thing is when you're flipping a pre-sale, the presentation center is basically gone. The next buyer is looking at a contract, a floor plan, and a probably building under construction. And that's not very easy to sell unless the market is really hot and there's not enough inventory on the market where they can actually go and buy units that they want in the resale market. So that's when assignments come into play and are a good time for you to flip the assignment. So when there's no presentation center, and a lot of developers, if they have one, they won't allow you to show the presentation center for the sake of flipping your pre-sale. So keep that in mind. And the third thing is when it comes to pre-sales, a lot of developers will say, yes, you can assign the pre-sale unit, but the catch is that you need to pay all your deposits. If it's 15% deposit that you were committed to giving to the developer, you have to pay all the 15% deposit. Second thing is I talked about MLS. Third thing is going to be, even though the developer is allowing assignment, it is at their discretion whether they want this assignment of contract to go through or not. You always need to get an approval to market the assignment and approve and you also need approval from the developer to sign off on the assignment. You can't just sell it to somebody and say, okay, it's done. No, you have to do an entire contract of purchase and sale, which is the assignment of contract. And you obviously would have an agent that is selling your assignment, and there would be a buyer's agent who's buying the assignment or has a client who's buying the assignment. It's like any other real estate transaction. So you will be paying commissions as well. So keep that in mind. So that's cutting into your margins when you're thinking about flipping pre-sales. Now, once you have an accepted offer where both parties agree to buy the unit for 570 in that scenario, you then send that contract over to the developer. The developer then will take all the information from the buyer side, seller side, everything, and they will say, oh, remember there was a 1% assignment fee in your contract. So the assignor or the seller now has to pay that 1% assignment fee at that time to the developer. It's not paid on completion. That fee has to be paid when you send the contract over for approval. They will collect their 1% fee, the developer will, and then they will sign off on the contract, and they will send their own documents to make sure that the next party understands what they're buying, and then all the legality and the contracts are in place. Now, once the developer has approved it, now you're in a firm contract, and whatever deposit you had negotiated with the buyer, they pay the deposit in the trust account or direct to a assignor, whatever you have negotiated. That's kind of how this will work. Now, what happens then? You now wait for completion. Now, completion notice is going to be sent to the original buyer in many cases, but if the developer is more professional, I say, there are some developers that are not, they will send the notice directly to the assignee, which is the next buyer that bought it from you. So if you're the seller in this case, you might get a notification of completion as well, along with the other party. Sometimes they only send it to the next party, but the responsibility 100% now is on that party to close on. For some odd reason, that party that bought the unit from you for $570 and paid you the deposit of $25,000 cannot complete on the project. Their financing falls apart. Whatever happens, they take off, something happens in their life, and they can't close on that assignment of contract. the responsibility will then fall back on you as the assignor to close on that property. Very important to understand, because you're the original buyer and the developer is going to put the responsibility and essence back on you to close on that property now. So the deposit that the assignee paid you, in many cases, it's non-refundable, and they will forfeit that deposit to you if they can't complete on it. You can sue them for damages if there's any sorts of legal issues and things that you think that they have violated, and the commission, the realtor fees, all that stuff. That's a separate scenario. But keeping that in mind, that assignments are not as easy as you think, and it's not an easy flip. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. For example, if everything goes smooth and on completion, you will have a lawyer that represents you, and they will look at your original contract, and they will look at the difference, the profit that you've made, and they will draft up all the documents and send it to the assignee's lawyer, where there also will be a developer's lawyer who's going to be looking at the proceeds on how the money is being moved. On completion or prior to completion, developer will send out a notice to do a walkthrough. You don't have to do the walkthrough if you're the seller or you bought you're the original purchaser. The assignee, which is the next final buyer, is going to go and do a walkthrough, and they will do all the due diligence and the deficiencies and make a list and deal with that with the developer. It's not your problem at this point. Now, on completion, once everything's smooth, everything's done, then all the disbursements will happen. In many cases, people think that you put $50,000 as a deposit to the developer, and then you flip it for a $50,000 profit or $70,000 profit in this scenario, you get your entire $100,000 back. That's not how this works. Nobody will give you $100,000 just for a contract, because everybody's skin needs to stay in the game to make sure that it goes smooth and people take get what they say they're going to get. The developer is going to deliver on their promise, the assignor is going to deliver on their promise, and the assignee is going to get what they want, because at the end of the day, they're the final end user. So there's a lot of moving parts to assignments of contracts. So I'm hoping that this gives you a little bit of clear picture on how assignments of contract works and things that you need to keep in mind. Assignments are a great way to make profits on pre-construction if the price point that you bought was right and now the units has gone up. But I always say this is always plan B. Plan A is always to close on it. But if the market is great and you're making money, why not flip it, take the profits home, and that's how you move around with pre-sales and contract assignments of contracts. Hoping that this gives you more clarity. If there's any more questions and you're looking at an assignment of contract, or you're thinking about selling your pre-sale contract, I would love to work for you and connect with you. I specialize in pre-sales throughout the Lower Mainland, most specifically in Fraser Valley, but I'd love to connect. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.